Hey everyone, welcome to September week number 3. This week we're talking about trust again and how we can trust God no matter what, but also how we can trust that God has a plan. And so this week is about Jacob's dream that he had from God and how God was working on a plan in his life even though he wasn't really following God yet. And so it's a really cool story and activity. Now remember, these first activities we do are really just warm-ups, getting to know the kids, kind of focusing in those kids from all the craziness that they had and you had that week, and how we can focus it in on God and God's plan for us. So this first one, you'll have all of these little cards cut up into different pieces, and you can tape one to a kid's back, and then all the other kids are going to act out for that specific kid what it is that is on the picture. And so they're trying to guess what's on the picture based off of the acting from their friends, okay? So that's just the early arrival fun activity to get them warmed up and kind of moving and getting to know each other a little bit. Then you're going to have some masking tape, and I want you to tape 2 different lines that are about 6 inches apart from each other, okay? So these 2 lines, 6 inches apart from each other, kind of a pretty good amount to where all the kids can fit in between the lines, and signify one as the top of the line, one as the bottom of the line, and then you're going to want to have them line up in different scenarios. So for instance, like line up from oldest to youngest, right? And then the oldest will be at the top, the youngest will be at the bottom. Now their goal is to communicate with each other and try to figure all of that out to make a plan to do it. And so as they do that, then there's another one that's like, if you have a pet, stand in the front. If you do not have a pet, stand in the back, and then make sure that they have a dividing line somewhere and they get it right. And so all of it is about talking through it and getting a plan through it. And so I think that'll be a really good one to, 1, to get to know the kids, 2, to get that mindset of a plan, and then transition into, okay, God had a plan for this man named Jacob today, and Jacob was a descendant of Abraham. He was a grandson, and so how God still kept his promise, and we can trust in that promise. And so that's what the story is about. It's about how God was still working on Abraham's promise even though Jacob wasn't even following him yet, right? And then Jacob has this dream and basically is telling Jacob to follow him and whatnot. And so it's a really cool story. Anyway, we're going to break that down even further into small groups on go through that Bible story together in the Bible as well. And so open up those Bibles, go through the story. It's at the very top of this after video activity 1, the references that you need. And then with this, you'll have some story cards, and these story cards, the goal is to have them put them in order, okay? And so again, tape one of these per kid's back. If you have more cards than you do kids, then just tape multiple cards to the last in the line or something like that. But make sure that they stay in order, okay? And so if you have 2 cards on a kid's back, then make sure both of those cards are in order, so that way the story makes sense. And then their goal is to put it on order and then try not to interfere yet, because then you can start reading the story and see if they got it correct. And so kind of make it a competition on if they can get it right or not. And then as they go through that, we kind of see how Jacob was not a very good person and how he wasn't a very trustworthy person, at least. And so with that, he tricked his brother twice and he lied to his father, all of that stuff. We want to ask the kids, would you trust Jacob in this situation? And they would probably be like, well, no, because he did this, this, and this, right? And so that's kind of the point we're trying to get across, is like, he wasn't a very trustworthy person, but God was, because God had a plan. And so we can trust that God is true, and we can trust that we can trust God because he has a plan for our lives, and he's going to carry it on, right? So even though Jacob wasn't really a good guy in that sense, then we can still trust that God is going to carry it through because he still kept his promises that he made to Abraham. And then this next one, you will not have enough to do one of these per kid. You'll probably just have like 1, maybe 2 per group. First service, make sure that second service has enough supplies for this as well. But basically, you're going to make some catapults, okay? Now, I showed a video in large group at the very end a couple weeks ago about the catapult guys. I'm going to show that one again so that this references this activity, okay? And as they go through this activity, they'll see kind of how they have to trust the other person on that little cool trapeze thing that we got going on, and the catapult thing that they were doing, the acrobats. And so as they're doing that, it's really just understanding how Jacob learned that the one that he could always trust was the one that repeatedly kept those promises, which was God, right? And so just like those guys have to trust each other when they're doing the activity on that acrobat thingamajig, then we also can trust God in that kind of same way. And so you can trust God has a plan. Okay. And then you have some discussion questions that go along with that as well. Then this next one, you'll have some painter's tape and a beanbag. Make some targets with the painter's tape, and then you'll take the beanbag, and then anytime a kid hits starts from far away on the other side of the room, hits the target with the beanbag, then they have to say the memory verse. Okay, and so kind of make that the goal is if you hit the target, you get to say the memory verse and then go through that a couple times. If the kids are just not interested in that, then go like the one word at a time, tossing it to each other thing, where they can go through the whole memory verse together. And then you have a trust journal activity page, which is the last one. So gather around, do a prayer around this trust journal, and then also go through that number 3 on the trust journal. Remember that you have trust journals from the previous weeks, and so use those again for this week, and then keep them again for one more week, and we'll give it to them next week. And all of that to say it's about trusting, right? And so talk about in this moment too how maybe you haven't trusted someone before, or someone has betrayed your trust before, right? And how like what did that look like? Maybe someone was really mean to you or just said that they were going to do something and never did it, that kind of thing. But then always circle it back to, okay, but we can trust God, right? And so focus it in on trusting God no matter what, because his plan is perfect and he is the one we can truly trust. And that's it for this week, guys. Thank you guys so much for all that y'all do. See you guys in a little bit.